Assalamu alaikum. In the name of God, the all-knowing, the most merciful. It's a privilege to have Dr. Khalid Zaheer as our esteemed teacher and a scholar to talk about the certain topics. And one of them we picked for today is called blasphemy. And it is, as we know, already related to Islam and Muslims. So Dr. Khalid Zaheer does not need an introduction. However, he is Ph.D. He is Al-Mawrid Fellow. He has his own YouTube channel. He does many scholarly lectures, especially about religion and Quran. And along with me, we have Mariam Azmi, a potential PhD student, moderating with us. And hopefully we can get through this. So Dr. Khalid Zaheer, welcome to Al-Mawrid Institute Canada.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome, sir.
Over to me?
Yes, sir. You can start whenever you feel like. Otherwise, I can give you like. Okay, go ahead.
I'll start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of God, whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. I have been asked to speak on blasphemy law. Blasphemy law in Islam. What exactly is it? If at all there is one. I have chosen to divide my, I hope so, brief presentation into 5 parts. I just briefly mentioned to begin with my understanding. And then I'll move on to mention the Quranic basis of my understanding. Why I understand that blasphemy law is the way I think Islam views it. And the third part would explain that if what I'm saying is correct, then why is it that people have a different point of view? And the fourth part is going to clarify that if there is a basis for blasphemy law, even though not a correct basis, but there is nonetheless a basis, how would you explain it? What is your take on it? And finally, I'll hopefully come up with a final word. So,
all right.
What is my understanding? Is that okay?
Yeah, please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. My understanding, simply stated, is that there's no blasphemy law in Islam. Islam would not ask its believers to neither kill nor take to task otherwise people who are indulged in blasphemy, who use foul, negative language against our religion, our religious text, our creator, our prophet. May God's mercy be on him. So there's nothing in our religion that requires us to take any action against the people who indulge in this kind of an evil activity. What is the basis of my understanding? Obviously, it's a sweeping statement that I've made at the very outset. But what's the basis of my understanding? Well, primarily there are 2. One is what I call a textual basis, and the other is what I would like to call philosophical basis. Let me first talk about the textual basis. The Quran talks about blasphemy, not about the concept of blasphemy, but about the fact that people at the time when the Quran was being revealed were actually blaspheming against the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, against the Quran. So you would find quite a few verses which are actually talking about the behavior, attitude, language of the disbelievers, which could be which could be categorized as blasphemy. However, in none of the mentions there is a requirement from the Almighty that the believers should take action against those who are indulged in blasphemy. I just mentioned, we all know that the Quran, the book of God, is divided into two components. One component is the component of Meccan surahs, and the other is of the Medinan surahs. So the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, he preached in Mecca for the first 13 years of his prophetic mission. And then he migrated to Medina, where he spent something like 10, 11 years before the Almighty asked him to complete and come back to, leave this world and come back to him. So in the Meccan period, the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, and his followers were weak. That is, from a worldly point of view. They were the people who were punished for their views. They were poor people, they were slaves, they were young people who believed in the message brought by the Prophet, and they were tortured. And they couldn't do much against those who were causing harm to them. In the Medinan period, however, the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, was able to get what we might call the authority of the state. There was a city-state of Yathrib, Medina, and the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, was the ruler. So his command was obeyed and followed. So in Meccan period, don't be surprised if you find that there are many statements which were made by disbelievers and are mentioned in the Quran, talking against the Prophet, talking against the Quran in a way which was disrespectful, insulting. And the Almighty continued to ask the Prophet to be patient and to ignore what they were saying. But you know what? If the Almighty did not want blasphemy to ever be uttered, it would have been a good idea that even if the disbelievers were using insulting remarks, those remarks should not have been mentioned in the Quran. Quite the contrary, what we find that the insulting remarks of the disbelievers have been accommodated in the Quran. We recite them, and we learn that how painful it was that those who did not believe, it's not just that they did not believe, they actually were very harsh. They were very unfair, unreasonable in their attitude. I'll just quote one verse from the Meccan period. It's from Surah Swad, Surah number 38, verse 4, wherein towards the end of the verse, the Almighty says that these people are talking about the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, that he is Sahirun Kassab. It's difficult to translate it, but I have to do it because I'm talking about the Quran. And the Quran is quoting the kuffar who said that he is a magician and a liar. So, I mean, if the kind of attitude which many Muslims have, who really think that you just talking about blasphemy is something which is very close to blasphemy, then I just want to tell them that, this is what you're doing actually when you're reciting the Quran. So, that's something that should be very clear to everybody, that the Quran cannot say anything other than what is correct and right on this, taking us on the straight path. Very briefly, I'll just run through some of the Medinan verses. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah number 2, verse number 104, the Almighty says, believers do not say Ra'ina, instead say Unzurna. There were people, hypocrites, inspired, trained by the Jews, who would come to the Prophet's gatherings and would, because they didn't believe, in order to make fun of him, and they could not do it openly because obviously, as I said, in Medina, he was at the helm of the affairs. So they would do it in a way that uh, they would think that it's a very subtle way of doing it. Nobody else would know, but they will be able to enjoy the base evil pleasure of that blasphemy. And they used to say Rayana in a way that it would actually mean something different from what it's normally used for. In English, when you're listening to somebody and the person is not particularly clear, not particularly audible, you say either, may I beg your pardon? Or you might say, could you kindly repeat? Likewise, in Arabic, there are two expressions, Rayna and Unzurna. So when these people came with this cheap way of teasing the Prophet, may God mercy be on him, the Quran, instead of asking the believers in Medina, by the way, instead of asking them that get hold of these people and kill them, the Quran says, believers, don't say Rayna, instead say Unzurna. That is, just remove this word Rayna, which is incorrectly pronounced deliberately uh, to make it mean something else. Just eliminate it from your vocabulary. Instead of it, say just Unzurna, right? Wasmau, and listen carefully so that you don't need to use these words. That is one verse. The other verse is verse 140 of Surah An-Nisa, Surah number 4, wherein the Almighty is actually telling believers that why is it that you are, behaving in a way that you're not dealing with um, these hypocrites properly. These hypocrites are the ones who are making fun of your religion. And if you're going to be with them, if you're going to continue to accompany them, then you know what? You might find yourself getting inclined towards them. So you've already been instructed, and the Quran is actually referring towards, pointing at one of the verses that was revealed earlier in Surah Al-An'am. So the Almighty says in Surah An-Nisa, Surah number 4, 140, that regarding these hypocrites, وَقَدْ نَزَّلَ عَلَيْكُمْ, it has already been revealed for you, fil kitab, in the book, an iza samaytum ayatillahi yukfaru biha wa yustahzau biha, that when you listen to God's verses, that they are being rejected, and yustahzau biha, and they are being made fun of, fala taqudu ma'ahum, then don't sit with them. Don't sit at a place where the Almighty's religion, his verses are being ridiculed. Hatta yakhudu fi hadithin ghairi, until such time that they get involved in a discussion other than the insulting remarks. If that happens, you can come back and join them. Innakum izam mithluhum, if you will continue to stay with them while they are making fun of your religion, then you will be considered like them. So in other words, there is a clear strategy, instructions, policy that the Almighty has mentioned in the Quran regarding blasphemy, which most certainly doesn't mention anything to be done against those who are indulged in it, except for the fact that the believers have been asked that, don't be a part of them. Then we move on to verse 51 of Surah Al-Ma'idah. It's a well-known verse. It says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, believers, la tattakhizul yahud wan nasara awliya. Don't make these Jews and these Christians your friends. I'm not talking about the verse in general, obviously, it's not talking about all Jews and all Christians. It's just talking about a particular category of Jews and Christians. And it says, "Ba'duhum awliya'u ba'd," they are friends unto each other. وَمَن يَتَوَلَّهُمْ, and whoever is going to make them friends, minkum, amongst you, فَإِنَّهُ minhum, then he's going to be considered a part of them, from amongst them. Inna Allah la yahdil qawm az-zalimin. God doesn't guide those who are unfair people. And then the Almighty goes on to explain what does it actually mean when he says that don't make these Jews and these Christians your friend. Who are these Jews and who are these Christians? So the Quran explains, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, believers, la tattakhizul lazina takhazu dinakum khuzuwan wa laiba. Do not make those people who make your religion an object of ridicule and insult. Min allazina utul kitab, from amongst the people of the book, min qablikum, before you, wal kuffar, and other disbelievers, awliya, don't make them your friends. That is, what is mentioned in verse 51 is actually being explained over here, that those who are making fun of your religion, don't make them your friends. Wattaqullah, and fear God, in kuntum mu'minin, if you are truly believers. Wa iza nadaytum ila salat, and you know what happens when you are being asked to come over for prayers, you are invited for prayers. In other words, when azan is being made, ittakhazuha huzumam wa laiba, they make fun of it and they play around, and they take it as jest. Zalika biannahum qawmun la yaqilun. This is because they are the kind of people who don't know the reality of God's message. Finally, there is another important verse which I must introduce to you if you already don't know. It's in Surah Al-Munafiqun, which is Surah number 63, and it's verse 8, where the Almighty is talking about a group of hypocrites who had gone along with the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, and other Muslims in an expedition. Probably it was a battle against the disbelievers. And while they were there on their way, somewhere in the journey, this leader of the hypocrites, he delivered a speech which the Quran has quoted a part of it, and says, he said, Yaqulun, they say, Layr rajana ila al-Madina, when we are going to return to Medina, la yukhrijanna al-azzu min al-azal, then those who are respected, who are respectable, they are going to exterminate azzu min al-azal, those who are not worthy of respect. Obviously, the reference was clear. They were talking about themselves as if, categorizing themselves, considering themselves as respectable people. And I don't have to tell you who they were trying to call disrespect, not worthy of respect. What did God say? This is height of the Muslim power, glory, and control. And the Quran says, Walillahi al-Izzah, and for God is all respect, Wali Rasulihi, and for his messenger, Walil Mu'mineen, and for the believers, Walakinnal Munafiqeen la ya'lamun, but these hypocrites, they don't know. Isn't it brilliant? I mean, that's how God's message should be. Balanced, no overreaction, just clarifying what the truth is, but no action demanded against the hypocrites or the disbelievers. This question of blasphemy has been debated in Pakistan for quite some time now because of the unfortunate incidents that have taken place in our country and continue to take place. And obviously, only recently we've had this attempt on Salman Rushdie, and this was obviously based on the same understanding. So there was a debate on television, and there were so many debates and discussions that took place. And in one of these debates, because religious people somehow are bent upon to prove that there is a there's a definite blasphemy law in Islam, and the Quran mentions it. There was a gentleman, and I don't want to name him. He referred to a verse of the Quran, and this is Surah Ahzab, Surah number 33. And what he mentioned was something that kind of shocked many people who were participants, and some of them were trying to say that there is no punishment or no such blasphemy law in Islam as is claimed by some traditional Muslims. The verse is verse 57. So the gentleman, he said that the Quran very clearly says that there is a blasphemy law. And it says, Innal lazina yuzuna allaha wa rasulah. Indeed, those people who cause harm to, who are, harming God and the messenger, la'anahumullah. God has cursed upon them, fit dunya wal akhirah, in this life as well as in the next life. Wa'adda lahum azaban muhina, and he has prepared for them a punishment of insult. Now, he mentioned it and then went on to say that this punishment was, and he quoted that the Quran says, Mal'unin, they're all cursed. Aynama thuqifu, wherever they are found, ukhizu, they should be seized. Wa quttilu taqtila, and they should be killed mercilessly. Now the trouble is that the earlier verse that he mentioned was verse number 57, and this verse is verse 61. And in between, the Almighty is actually talking about the hypocrites who actually caused a lot of problems, chaos, fear amongst Muslims, terror amongst Muslims. And it wasn't just a mere act of blasphemy. They were actually causing harm to Muslim men and women. And the Almighty said that enough is enough, and now they're going to be taken to task. So I just wanted to mention this particular passage because it has been employed by some people to prove that there is a blasphemy law in the Quran, very clearly mentioned. Now I'll just go on to mention the philosophical basis of my understanding. This philosophical basis again has two parts. One part is wherein the Almighty has very clearly mentioned that you cannot kill except for two reasons. One reason is that if a person has killed another person, then that person can be killed if the law is allowed to take its course and the murder is proved beyond doubt, then the killer can be killed. It's one of the possibilities mentioned in the Quran. And the other possibility is that if there is somebody, one person or a group of people who cause mischief on earth, then such people are also, liable to. One of the possibilities is that they can be killed. Although there are other possibilities for their punishment also mentioned. So if there is a person who is doing neither of them, is guilty of neither of the crimes, then that person is cannot be killed, because the Quran very clearly says that these are the only two reasons why somebody can be killed. If you kill one person, one individual, one soul, it is as big a crime, according to Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah number 5, verse 32, as if you have killed the entire mankind. And if you save one person, it is as if you've saved the entire mankind. And there are only two exceptions mentioned in that verse, which I've already talked about. Obviously, there could be people who might say that blasphemy is causing mischief on earth. This is something which has been debated. At times, it can cause mischief on earth if if there are people who are getting killed, if there is chaos in the society, and if there are people who are employing blasphemy as a tool for creating disorder. But mere blasphemy or negative remarks itself does not constitute mischief on earth. Now, the other aspect of my, what I call philosophical explanation to my position is that um, if you have a message which is meant to be delivered to others, like the message of Islam, the message of Quran is, it's meant for the entire humanity. And the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, is a prophet for the entire humanity. Then you simply cannot have a blasphemy law, because you would want people to talk to you. You would want people to think about your religion, to consider it, if it's making sense to them or not. And when you're going to talk to people, they'll ask you questions. And they're not going to ask you questions according to the way you would want them to ask. They'll have their own style. And let's face it, I mean, the way we are presenting Islam, there are people who are against Islam. And unfortunately, it so happens that because of our bad, poor behavior, performance, they blame the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, for that, which is obviously absolutely wrong. We are misrepresenting the message of the Almighty. It's our duty to clarify to people that, the Prophet was not the way we are. He was very different. I recently, I mentioned it to some people that, when there was this discussion on the blasphemy allegedly that was done in France, and there was a call from Muslims in Pakistan that their diplomats should be expelled from Pakistan and we should take strong action against them. I said, these French people should be told that, look here, what you've said and done against our Prophet, we don't like it. It pains us. We would like you to do one thing for us. Allow some of our scholars to go to your country and let them know who the Prophet was. That's it. We want nothing else. I think that's what needs to be done. The philosophical reason that I was mentioning was that if you want to preach Islam, then you cannot demand respect from the people you are preaching to. Let them react. Let them ask questions. If they are upset about your religion, think about your religion. Think about the way you've understood it. Revisit your religious understanding, your narrative, instead of blaming others. Because quite often people who are asking you questions, they have a point. So, I mean, instead of criticizing yourself and your point of view, your understanding, you start blaming others. So I have a fear that some of us might actually find ourselves guilty of preventing people from coming close to the message of the Almighty. Let's not forget that Umar Radiallahu anhu, may God be pleased with him, embraced Islam after 6 years. It was for 6 years that the Prophet was preaching Islam and reading out the Quran in Mecca. Mecca was a very small town. Everybody knew everybody else. It was almost a daily encounter. He knew who the Prophet was and what a great person, a man of high character he was. And yet he opposed him for 6 years. And obviously he was not opposing with respect. He had his emotions. But then God gave him faith. And what a strong believer he turned out to be. Another case in point is the case of Khalid bin Walid. May God be pleased with him as well. He became a Muslim, converted to Islam 18 years after the first revelation was revealed unto the Prophet. And in these 18 years, he fought battles against Muslims, battles in which the Prophet was apart. In other words, he fought against Muslims, and when you fight, you try to kill. And then after 18 years, he became a Muslim. And what we're trying to do is that a person speaks negatively about Islam and you want to kill him. And I don't want to mention instances of people who even today, in modern times, started off by criticizing Islam strongly, using language which was nothing but blasphemy. And then God gave them the understanding of Islam and they converted to Islam. So, we can't afford to have this understanding of blasphemy, which is quite popular amongst Muslims, but it has got nothing to do with Islam. So obviously the next question is, if what you're saying is right, then why then is it that Muslims, they believe that there is a punishment for blasphemy? Well, why do they believe that the punishment for blasphemy is capital punishment? Such people should be killed. In fact, people would like to take the privilege of killing others. Goodness me. So the reason is that they quote examples of people who were killed in Medina, people who had apparently, allegedly committed blasphemy. So they say that it's pretty much clear that there were people who got killed, and they were killed, as we know through hadith, through history, because they had indulged in blasphemy. So it's a pretty clear case. Whoever commits blasphemy, as happened in the time of in the life of the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, they were killed. So should these people be killed as well. Now, here is a lot of trouble, a lot of difficulty. I've already quoted quite a few verses and said that there's no mention, none whatsoever, that these people should be killed simply because of blasphemy. Instead, the Muslims have been asked to adopt a behavior wherein they don't confront these people while they are indulging in blasphemy, and continue to behave well, and continue to preach the message and be patient. So why then were these people killed? Were they killed? Is it that this information is incorrect? Well, we can't say that. Honestly, I mean, I am very clear about the fact that history is not a part of Islam. But then the part of history which is undeniable has to be explained in the light of Islam. Yes, it's not a part of Islam. It has to be explained in the light of the Quran and the Sunnah. So how do we explain it? Well, very briefly, we know that the Quran tells us that the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, was a messenger, a Rasul. And when Rasul come to this world, they come with a mandate that when they have delivered the message to their nation clearly, and there is what is known as Itmam Hujjah, that is, the message is delivered so very clearly and convincingly that there remains no excuse for the contemporaries of the messenger, the immediate addressees. The Almighty declares that they are going to be punished, and this punishment is mentioned by the messengers right from day one. If you're not going to believe, then God is going to ultimately punish you exactly the same way he punished the nation of Nuh, Hud, Saleh, Lut, Shuaib, Musa, alayhi salam. May God be pleased with all of them. So the Quran talks about it. And the Quran also clarifies, and I don't want to go into the details of it. The Quran also talks about the fact that in the case of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the punishment, instead of coming through natural calamities, it was It was something that was inflicted upon the enemies, the rejectors, through the swords of the companions. So, for instance, in Surah number 8, Surah Anfal, verse 17, the Almighty says about the battle of Badr, "Falam taqtuluhum," Muslims, you did not kill them. "Walakin Allah qatalahum." Instead, it was God who killed them. And Surah Tawbah, the next Surah, Surah number 9, verse 14, the Almighty says, "Qatiluhum," fight them. "Yu'azzibhumullahu bi'aydikum." God is going to punish them through your hands. So the Almighty punished those people who rejected the message of the messenger after it had become clear to them as a part of the policy, the sunnah of the Almighty. And this punishment was inflicted in installments. It started from Battle of Badr and it continued till the ninth Hijrah, ninth year of Hijrah. So, it was a duration of 7-8 years in which this punishment was inflicted upon people in installments on different people, depending upon their state of kufr, their behavior, their attitude. So some of the people who got killed were the ones who were killed because of this law. It had got nothing to do with a law of blasphemy. It had to do with the law of what we might call risala, the law relevant to the messengers, or the law that has to do with the people who, even after the truth has become absolutely clear to them because of the way it is presented by the messengers, and they continue to reject and deny, they are the ones that were taken to task. And that's what happened to some of these people who, by indulging in blasphemy, they declared their disbelief openly. And therefore, that law, which is the law implemented by the Almighty. So, Ghamdi Saab, our teacher, mentor, has rightly said that these incidents of killing in the books of history should be written under the caption that these are the people who were killed by God. They weren't killed by humans. As the Quran says, "Walam taqtuluhum," you did not kill them. "Walakin Allah qatalahum." Instead, it is God who killed them. And the last word, you people are, I'm talking to most of the people who are living in Canada and North America. You have to live your religion. You have to understand your religion. You have to become a good example for others. And you have to let others know about God's religion. You ought to understand what exactly is the correct position of Islamic teachings regarding blasphemy and other such similar issues. Because, people are not impressed. They don't even want to think about Islam when they are informed about the fact that Islam stands for killing of people who are indulged in blasphemy. And we are showing it to the world at large. The way, for instance, Salman Rushdie was attacked. So, but it's our duty to explain it to people. People would ask questions, we'll answer them. And likewise, another law which people are not impressed by is the law regarding apostasy. Somebody who was a Muslim and then becomes a non-Muslim needs to be killed. This is again something which is absolutely not correct. But sadly, it really has become a part of the understanding of Islam because there are many Muslims who believe that that's what the truth is. So what I'm saying to you is that, you have a special role to play in this, in the Western world. I say it because, life is a puzzle. Life asks questions. And I'm not saying it with any degree of pride, just saying humbly that the only right, convincing, satisfying answer to this puzzle of life is provided by Islam. So let not the unnecessary hurdles between the message of Islam and the non-Muslims let not these hurdles stop them from coming close to Islam. أقول قولي هذا. This is what I had to say. وَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ. And I seek forgiveness for myself and for you, and for all believing men and women. Right, now I'm available for your comments and questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khalid Zaheer. This was very comprehensive. And apparently, it's very nice that you have quoted all the Quranic verses from which we cannot derive the blasphemy law. However, we do have Muslim civilizations, cultures, countries, there they do have a law. So if we go to the mazahib, the four, and we see that the only one that didn't have an explicit blasphemy punishment was Hanafi early on when the Hanafi school of thought. And but now even they seem to be converging, or like 30% are now to the same level that there should be a capital punishment for blasphemy. So it seems that tide is going against rationalizing the situation, circumstances arising for blasphemy itself. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that when you talk about the traditional mazahib schools of thought, well, 3 out of 4 seem to be in favor of capital punishment for blasphemy, and the one mazhab, Hanafi mazhab, its followers also seem to be going in the same direction. This is because, you know, the spirit of true dawah is missing, A, and the Quran is not properly understood, B, and the relationship between Quran and the Muslim history is not properly understood. And once a certain religious understanding point of view becomes widespread, becomes popular, then, you know, people find it difficult to alter it and revisit it. I think for that purpose, I don't know. I mean, you are responsible. I am responsible only to let people know what the truth is. We must continue to tell people that, look here, this is what Islam stands for. And we're not supposed to follow any one particular mazhab school of fiqh. We have to follow the Quran and Sunnah. And for that purpose, we have to look at the verses of the Quran honestly, with the purpose of understanding what the Quran is saying. Unfortunately, what most Muslims have not realized is that the Quran tells us time and again to use our intellect while we are reading the Quran. And I keep telling people that the one principle of Quranic interpretation that supersedes all others is the principle that says that there is no contradiction in the Quran. So if you are reading the Quran and understanding Islam in a way that there appears to be an apparent contradiction in the teachings of Islam, then be absolutely sure that your understanding is incorrect. Unfortunately, Brother Yasin, I can say nothing except the fact that we have to let these people belonging to these mazahib, to come back to the Quran and let's have a discussion on it. And let not our emotions overwhelm us to an extent that we are not able to understand the Quranic verses properly.
Thank you so much, sir. We do have a question from our audience. Sarfraz, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab. Kaise hain aap?
Walaikum assalam.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
Just one comment and one question. The comment is, I think, Dr. Saab, I recommend that the promotion or the advertisement of this class should be properly done. I think so. There is some miscommunication. I was also not aware that today is going to be a class by you, because normally on Saturday and Sunday Dr. Shazad take the classes.
Thank you so
I
much, Sir
think,
Praz. I do understand the conflict of time, and I apologize. We should be more careful next time, inshallah. So if you can
yeah, because
carry on with the question.
yeah, so this is a very important topic, and a lot of people are, misunderstand this thing, and we have to clarify the right way. The question, Dr. Saab, I would like to ask about this Surah Azab, what you mentioned, ayat number 57. So maybe I didn't get the right answer. So what was your reply when he did comment on this?
Fortunately, I was not a part of that program, but I know it
Oh.
because it actually became very popular, later on. And
Okay.
this program episode was shown on. I think it really was shared in the social media quite a lot.
Okay.
Sadly, the gentleman did not mention the intervening verses, which starting from verse 57 took the subject to verse 61, and in between mentioned clearly that these hypocrites are actually causing mischief on earth. It's within these verses that we find that the Almighty is asking the wives of the Prophet, the wives of and the women in general, and when they go out, they should be covered. They should cover themselves properly. ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أَن يُعْرَفْنَ. This is going to ensure that they are going to be recognized. فَلَا يُزَيْنَ. And they are not going to be teased. They are not going to be harmed, because these hypocrites, they would go and they would bring up this excuse that we were looking for our slave girls, so that's why we were doing what we were doing. So all that stuff was ignored, and he jumped from verse 57 to verse 61. I don't claim that what he did was deliberate, but I think it really is unfortunate. It needs to be clarified that it was not just because of blasphemy, but it was because of many other accompanying crimes that caused the Almighty to ultimately require believers to take action against them.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Sir Praz. Do you have any follow-up?
I would like to ask whether from Al-Mawrid we have explained this thing later on, or it was continuing circulating the same way.
I think not. I don't remember that anyone from amongst us did it, but there was a video clip that was in circulation where somebody actually did point out that what this gentleman did was wrong. I do lament the fact, it's unfortunate that the tone used by that gentleman was a bit too harsh and insulting for the person. And that's what the problem is. Quite often it so happens that in religious debates, like unfortunately now it's happening in Pakistan, in political debates, we don't give any significance to manners. We become indecent. So I'm not too sure whether somebody else did it, but I don't remember. But there's someone else who did it, but did not do it in a way that I think it should have been done. It should have been done very politely. Like we are telling Muslim brothers and sisters that you be polite to people who are blaspheming against our religion. We should also be polite to the people who are defending our religion, but in a wrong manner. Politeness, wisdom, softness, academic approach, attitude should never be lost.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sir Praz. That's a very good question. Next question is from Ashraf. Ashraf, please go ahead.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, Khalid Saab. Assalamu alaikum, audience. First of all, thank you so much. This is amazing. And yes, we need these topics quite often, not only just here, but everywhere else as well. My question is, what is your take on the freedom of speech and blasphemy? because, where do we draw the line? Like this is, I mean, I'm not sure if, because people have been quoting different things from different ulamas. Even they're quoting Imam Shafi, that Imam Shafi mentioned there's death is mandatory in blasphemy cases. So, and if there's repentance, the person should be free to go, in the sense you should forgive the person. But the repentance also comes, in a different manner, and people interpret it differently. So freedom of speech and blasphemy, what's your take? Then I have a follow-up question as
It's something very dear to my heart, the question of freedom of speech. I think freedom of speech, according to the Quranic understanding that I have, which obviously may not be completely right, but that's what I understand, that freedom is complete. People are allowed to speak whatever they want to. That doesn't really mean that people should talk rubbish. If somebody does it, and I have an influence over that person, I will tell him politely that, look here, let's be decent in the way we talk. But you can't stop people from speaking the way they speak, because they have their own mindset, they have their own training. You, as representatives of God's message, have a duty to let people know what the truth is, politely and wisely and academically. And don't forget, it is these cases of misuse of freedom of speech which open up and create opportunities for good Muslims to be able to impress others. Don't forget that it was these kind of possibilities, opportunities, that gave the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, the opportunity to show how great a man he was. Forgiving, polite, magnanimous. There are instances after instances in the life, glorious example of the Prophet, that he was always forgiving. You learn from the Quran that the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, was always forgiving. And he continued to forgive until such time that God Almighty himself forced him to become firm. So the Quran says on more than one occasion, Ya ayyuhan nabi, jahidil kuffara wal munafiqeen. You fight against the disbelievers and the hypocrites. Waghluz alayhim, and be firm against them. Because he was polite, he was caring, he was loving. So I think, freedom of speech should never be restricted. You know why? Let me try to explain it. What is belief? What is faith? It's a conviction that the Quran is God's message, and the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, is God's messenger. We were born Muslims, therefore we have been brought up with this understanding. But true faith gets in when you get convinced. And these people, the intellectuals, those who are living in different societies, they get impressed when they get examples, experiences of people talking sense with arguments without any emotional, negative emotional charge. So there comes a moment in the lives of some people who are otherwise against your understanding, because of your good behavior, which forces them to think, oh my goodness, this is making a lot of sense. As I said, I've given you two great examples, Umar, Khalid, Raziyallahu anhuma. There are many other examples. Even today we have those examples. So, you're telling me that in the Shafi'i school of thought, it's that, it says that there should be death for it unless the person repents. I don't know. I mean, forgive me for saying that. I'm sorry for saying that. I don't care. I mean, the Quran is absolutely clear. The Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, is absolutely clear in the way he behaved, that this message is a message for the entire humankind. No hurdles, no restrictions are going to be tolerated. And checks on freedom of speech are hurdles against the preaching of Islam. That's what my understanding is.
Jazakallah khair. And that's what, whenever people talk about Islam, they always bring four Imams in. And I also explain them, look, when are we going to be Muhammadi then? When are we going to follow the Prophet Muhammad? If we just keep bringing four scholars in every time and we don't understand it better, then we have to go back and review and revisit what we are learning. Absolutely. The follow-up question was, it's say if government makes laws about blasphemy and they intend to punish, like, so for example, they are moving towards a generic law. Let's say Canada passes a law about blasphemy and there's a limit on freedom of speech. On the other hand, the battle between the West and the East is always there as it is. They think that West has different view on Islam and East has different views. And how do we bring the consensus between the ulamas and the government? It's a big question, but I mean, what is your take on this?
It all depends on who am I talking to. If I'm talking to the government officials, the Canadian officials, for instance, I'll tell them what I honestly believe the stance of Islam is on this subject, freedom of speech, blasphemy, etc. If I'm going to talk to scholars, well, although it's going to be a very difficult task, but I'm trying to tell them that, you may disagree with me, but this is what my understanding is. And, I'm going to try to emotionally blackmail them, telling them to look at, are you becoming a hurdle between the message of Islam and the common man and the non-Muslims? You're going to be accountable to the Almighty for that. And I really mean it. So, this baggage of blindly following your traditional understanding and your ancestors is what is causing harm to the mission of disseminating the message of Islam. And you know what? I just want to say one thing more. This whole debate about the tension between West and East, I don't understand it. This tension is there because the West has not as yet been able to understand Islam properly. And it's our duty to let them know. I don't care if there is a tension. Probably the tension is because Muslims have not been able to present Islam properly. You see, you people living in Canada, America, and the West, don't you realize that the American soldiers who were sent to Afghanistan and Iraq to fight against Muslims, they come back, some of them, well, all of them are allowed to be exposed to the message of Islam. And a few of them, they convert to Islam. This is a tremendous opportunity. So I really look down upon all efforts that are undertaken by Muslims or non-Muslims to curb freedom of speech, because it is this freedom of speech which is going to allow us the opportunity, and it's allowing us this opportunity to let people know what the truth is. And they make a negative remark and people get upset. If you really truly believe, why are you upset? You know why they make those remarks? When a negative remark, I come across it, there's only one reaction, and that is they're making this remark because they don't know. I want to talk to them. I want to make them understand. They don't know what the truth is. That's why they're upset. And they have a right to be upset. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much, Khalid. This was very nicely done. Mariam, you're up. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the great talk. It was very enlightening to listen to you. So my question was in regards to what we could do in our day-to-day lives. You said you quoted one of the ayahs in the Quran where Allah says to not make friends with people who make fun of your religion. And I know this is back in the days of the Prophet's time, but for us who live in the West and we have to sort of become the representatives in our groups of, you know, non-Muslim friends, sometimes it feels like the religion gets attacked sort of unfairly. You don't have enough time to explain the reasoning behind some rulings, for example, rulings on homosexuality or the afterlife when Allah talks about the punishments and hell. And so in those cases, it's not, I wouldn't consider, like some people might consider it blasphemy. I don't see it as blasphemy because it's our duty to teach them, as you said. But at the same time, how much of friendship can you build with these people? Like, what can you do in your day-to-day life to make sure that, you know, you don't feel constantly attacked for believing in something, but also you don't send them away from the message? I hope my question's making sense.
No, it's very clear and it's a very important question. I really, again, another question that is very dear to my heart. Very important question. You know, one of the difficulties of understanding the message of the Quran is, it really is a challenge. And it's difficult because we've not been able to appreciate the true message of the Quran. You know, one of the things that we should always have at the back of our minds while reading the Quran is what I've already mentioned, that the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, like all other prophets, were able to make the message of God so very clear that beyond a certain time, certain duration, those who did not believe were the ones who did not want to believe. It wasn't that they didn't believe because they didn't know it. They knew it and they didn't believe. And how do we know? God tells us. And now we do not have any divine revelation coming to us anymore. Therefore, we do not have any right to doubt the intentions of others, no matter how negative they are against our religion. So, and as I said earlier, the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, would never, ever blame others. I mean, can you imagine? Oh my goodness, he would blame himself. And God Almighty would tell him that, are you going to kill yourself in this, because of this grief that they are not believing? It's not your fault. It's their fault. So what has happened to us Muslims is the very opposite. We hardly do anything in letting others know about it. And the way we do it, you know, I keep listening to these presenters of Islam in the West. And my goodness, they speak very well. Their English is so fluent, but they're so harsh. Oh my goodness, they're so strong in their hatred, in their negative thinking about the West. And I often wonder, why on earth are they there? Why don't they go to Afghanistan? Why don't they go to some other country where, when they will go, after 2 or 3 days, they would realize that, my goodness, it was a much better place than we were living in. No, I think my answer to you is that despite the fact that there is this mention that if somebody is making fun of your religion, you can't make them your friends. You can still make them your friends. Not because I'm saying something against the Quran, but because I think the Quran is stating this to the companions of the Prophet, who were the companions of a messenger who had already clarified the truth to everybody. And these people who were making fun were the ones who knew that it was true, and yet they were making fun of it. I hope you get my point. So your job is to, you know, if they are making fun of your religion, at that time, just ignore it. Don't show any reaction. Pray to the Almighty in your heart. Look for another opportunity. If they are in a mood to listen to you, make a point, and keep doing it. The last time I was in America, I was talking to a few people, and there was a Muslim lady, who said that when these people they have their own whatever parties in our office, I just remove myself from there. And I said to her, why do you do it? She said that, well, they're drinking over there. And I said, I mean, be there and don't drink, and let them know why you don't drink. For you, it's this opportunity of letting people know every now and then. And I tell you one thing, the people who are very strong in their criticism of Islam are the very people who are more likely to have faith, because they are the ones who feel strongly, and they're not getting it, and they're not getting the message properly because it's not being presented properly. So keep doing your job, keep talking to them, keep praying for them. And I am optimistic because, again, for the same reason, this life is a puzzle. There are some questions every human being comes across, faces those questions almost on a daily basis. Who created me? Why did he create me? Why do I know morally right things from morally wrong things? Why are there so many problems in this life? Why are some people rich, prosperous, others are not? Why do we die? What's going to happen after death? Who is our creator? What is he like? What are his attributes? I mean, does any philosophy narrative answer these questions? There is only one answer, and that answer is given by God. Alhamdulillah, we believe in it, and we believe in it because we are convinced. So, understand, realize your responsibility. Never lose your temper. Obviously, don't participate in, whenever they are making fun of your religion, if at all they are. I mean, tell them that, okay, let's talk about it. And one thing, last thing, don't think that the criticism that they are making against your religion is always wrong. I still remember, this is probably 15 years ago, in UK, there was this Christian lady. She said to me, I cannot take a message seriously which says that some people are going to be subjected to hellfire forever. Forever. On the one hand, he says he is merciful. And on the other hand, he says that there are some people he will throw into the hellfire to make them live there and burn and roast forever. I was speechless. I said, I mean, what should I say to her? I was absolutely speechless. You know what? This question remained in my mind. It's a damn serious question. Thankfully, the Quran would never disappoint you. I was able to realize many years later that what we call the eternity of the punishment of hell is not the kind of eternity that we normally think of. It's an eternity which, if I was to explain to you, well, I normally explain to my students that you're here for 8 semesters, and you're studying with me Islamic studies in the first semester. And if I tell one of you that if you'll continue to misbehave, I'll ask the authorities to make an announcement that this student is going to wear a particular dress that would make everybody else realize that he is a misbehaved student. And this punishment is going to last forever. You know what forever means here? 8 semesters. Over.
Jazakallah. I have one comment. Would you, or do you have any intention in mind to write a book or maybe something along this topic? Maybe you can gather these ayats and mention in the book too. That'll be a great source of clarification on this topic. Do you have any thoughts about that?
You know, I am as lazy a person as your exceptional teacher, Shehzad Salim, is not. I'm the very opposite of him. I say it with sadness, and I'm ashamed of myself. I want to write a book. I actually have a draft of it ready. But I lack this, call it motivation. Probably I'll be motivated now that you said it. I want to do it. You know, I think, you know, I needed this push because there's so much that needs to be clarified. But I somehow have a feeling that, you know, if I do it through these talks, probably that might be enough, but probably it's not enough. I think you need to write as well. I'll take it into account, inshallah.
Absolutely, and that'll be amazing, fantastic. And also we want more books in Canada because I see it's in the United States, but the shipping and everything is much more, it's just unrealistic shipping.
Thank you so much, Akram.
So-
to barge in. Dr. Khalid Zaheer has nothing to do with Al-Mawrid Canada. He's our host and our guest. So we will look into it. Al-Mawrid Institute Canada is working on these things, and our team will keep looking into it. And hopefully we'll have more books available for everybody to get on board, inshallah. So, and there's something in the chat as well. Maybe it's a follow-up question. So what Mr. Sarfraz is saying that he says, can we say Surah 33, Ayah 57 to 61, that the punishment is of Fisad bil Ard? Can we say that?
Let me say it, that it is actually the same punishment which I talked about somewhere in the middle of my lecture. The punishment that is meted out to the people who reject the messenger of God. The reason why I'm saying it is that there is a very clear indication within this verse, these verses in Surah Ahzab. If I point to verse number 62, after mentioning the fact that these people are cursed and wherever they are found, they should be seized, gotten hold of, and killed mercilessly. You know what the next verse says? Sunnat Allah. This is God's sunnah, his policy. Fil lazina khalaw min qabl, which was applied in the case of those people who came before. Walan tajida li sunnatillahi tabdila. And you will never ever find God's policy changing. So I think it's the same policy that has been applied, that those who oppose the messenger, they get punished in this very life. And let me also say one thing more. If you are somebody living during the times of a messenger of God, which obviously now we don't have the opportunity, you would either be on his side, his companion, or you will be his enemy. There are no midways. So, you know, what these people were doing in Medina is what all enemies, rejectors of messengers did during their respective times.
Thank you so much, sir. So we could be winding up. So, I'm just going to give a little bit of a twist to the story. So blasphemy arises from the deep and intense love of a personality. And we have deep love for a country. And treason is a punishable crime, right? So it is going against our cultural identity. Anybody who says that I hate my country, for example, right? He has committed treason or detention. He runs away from the military. He is punished. So we do have punishment for going for declaring. Well, how should I put it? For rebelling, for rebellion. So blasphemy, let's say it's such an emotional thing where we should have a law, or it should be punishable one way or the other. What do you say?
You know what? I keep telling people that, if you were to present the Prophet, may Allah's mercy be on him, as your spiritual leader, let's say as your father, and nobody else is, I wouldn't have had any problems. And I would have said that, okay, if somebody talks to you about your religion, just tell him, shut up. It's none of your business. It's my religion. I'm proud of it. Full stop. He's my father. You don't have any right to say anything about him. That's not what the case is. What we are saying is that he's not just my father. He's everybody else's father. He's everybody else's prophet. Some people have accepted him, and let's face it, we've accepted him because we were born to Muslim families. There are others who are yet to accept him. Our job is just to invite them and not present these philosophical excuses to punish those people who are not as yet convinced. So I think these intelligent, wise, clever explanations come because people want to punish those who are talking negatively about our religion and about our prophet. I'm saying it to you very clearly. There's no punishment. Somebody is talking negatively. Probably if he has a psychological problem, probably he should be treated by a psychologist or a psychiatrist. If he's a sane person, let's talk to him. I mean, how do you think an intelligent, sane person is going to continue to talk negatively about somebody who is Rahmatul lil Alamin, is a mercy for the entire mankind? So let's show to the people. I love the response of the Japanese Muslims. When this problem of blasphemy arose, early, the beginning of this century, probably it was in Netherlands or probably in Denmark, and there was a lot of reaction. There was a group amongst the Muslims of Japan who decided that our response is that we will invite every year one Muslim scholar to let the local Japanese know about the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him. Because I'm from Al-Mawrid, and there was an invitation extended to Ghamdi Sahab, but he couldn't go there. So I had the privilege of going there instead. And I loved the idea. I think that's what should be the response.
Brilliant. Oh, one more, a tricky one. So vigilante justice. Let's say vigilante justice, mob killing, right? Mob says that this was blasphemous and he deserves to die. Then our courts will not give him justice of death. We should do it on our own as Muslims. It is incumbent on us to take revenge. How would you respond?
It's a very complex problem. The first thing that I would say is that as people who are really concerned about their religion, we should be very concerned about such happenings. Obviously, there has to be a way of dealing with the law and order situation, but each and every individual who was found involved, guilty in that mob, should be taught, should be trained. I think they should be identified, and they should be properly trained and informed. I think, there is a lot of, there's a great need for having proper Islamic understanding to be put across in our society. The trouble is that, we've tried it, not quite as well as we should have, but it's not that we didn't try it. It so happens that when you make an attempt, you find that the biggest obstacles are coming from religious people themselves, because they don't agree with our understanding. So I think we've no choice but to continue to preach, put across our point of view politely. That's what we must do. And what you're doing, therefore, is a great job. Keep doing it, and do it as a, with a sense of responsibility. And obviously, this is exactly why you're doing it. I say that it's our responsibility, and we must understand it, because I don't know, there aren't any other people I can see who hold the same understanding. And this understanding, I believe, is coming from the book of God. So, we need to do as much as we can, and let's continue doing it. And therefore, really, I've got no excuse to be the kind of lazy person that I am. So, yeah, I mean, this mob psychology has to be challenged, but challenged in a proper, positive way, wise manner.
Thank you so much, my dear teacher. It was a privilege, an honor, a pleasure to have you on our website and on Al-Mawrid Institute Canada. Hopefully, we will come with more books entitled with proper terms by Dr. Khalid Zaheer himself.
Inshallah.
And inshallah, we'll keep on talking, sir. It was a pleasure. Have a blessed day and a happy life.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I mean, I loved the questions and the opportunity. I would like to have more of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, my dear participants. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.